back. Thank you for being here. We're getting set up. There we go. Beautiful.
All right. I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Stephanie Duguid. Dr. Stephanie is an educational leadership expert who helps individuals and organizations build cultures rooted in clarity, connection, and trust. With over 3 decades of experience across K through 12 and higher education, she understands that leadership doesn't begin in a title. It begins in how we communicate, model, and show up daily. Stephanie works with educators, parents, and leaders to create environments where people feel seen, supported, and empowered to grow. She is especially passionate about helping women lead with dignity and confidence, strengthening the connection between leadership at home, in schools, and across communities. And her talk title today is It Starts With You, How Communication and Connection Shape Your Child's Path from K-12 to College. Welcome, Dr. Stephanie. It is a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
This is so amazing. And I love it, being on the panel so people got a glimpse of, and now your full bios out there and everything in your talk title. So that is really, really cool. So we like to start as a little bit more of an introduction about why the passion. What is it about K-12 education and beyond, the strength and the leadership at the school level and the home level? Why is this a passion of yours? What brought that into your life?
Well, long story short, it started with my mom. My mom was a welcome wagon lady, for anybody that knows what that is, welcoming people in the community, strangers into friends very quickly. But she was also a 40-year educator that knew simply how to connect with people. And I thought that was natural. I thought that was normal. And so I've always been able to connect. But when I got into my professional life and my professional world in the educational space, I realized that that wasn't normal. The teachers weren't connecting with each other. They weren't connecting with the administrators. They weren't connecting with the kids or the parents or the communities. And so it took me a while to really navigate that and put a finger on that. But that's exactly what I was seeing. And now that I look back in retrospection, everything was miscommunication and misconnection. And so I have such a passion because, as we said on the panel, I think that Stanley said this best, is that we are so focused on the policies and the procedures that we forget about the people. And so now, especially with the influx of technology and everything else around us, connection is the foundation. And I think that starts with the kids in the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's one thing I have to give the schools credit for is the last couple of years I was there, they kept focusing on make connections with the kids. The first week of school isn't about a whole bunch of academics. Build those routines, build those schedules, build that connection with those kiddos so that they can learn from you for the rest of the school year. So there, that little bit they were getting right, but then they
yes
other ways.
No, absolutely. So there are some good things, and that's one of the things that we would always say at the college. We knew that students grew, we knew that students stayed enrolled, and we knew they would be more successful if they built relationships in college or with friends, whether that was having a friend in a classroom, whether it was a study buddy, or getting involved in an activity on campus. And so all of those things, any way that you can connect. And luckily, we have technology now. So although we say that it's harder to connect, it's easier to connect, but you have to be intentional about true connection. Yeah. Just saying hi on social media or sending a text, that's not true connection. Are you asking specific questions rather than just saying I'm fine or I'm good? It's asking those open-ended questions to get that true feedback and connection.
You saying that, I have recently seen like a group of girls all sitting together and they were all texting. It's like, how come you're not talking to each other? It's like, we are. And they were all texting each other right there. And again,
open your mouth and talk.
There was this other time, it's like I was sitting around a campfire and there were 5 women sitting next to me around this campfire. And I noticed something and I started looking at them. And then I was just fascinated because they were having 5 conversations at the same time. Okay. And my mouth dropped open and one of them kind of saw me and it put a little, and then their conversation kind of died down. And it's like, because one of them was answering one and listening to another and turning. And so there were literally 5 conversations going on at the same time. Blew my mind. The concept never even existed for me. And so that started a conversation. And now it's like they do that with these text messages because talking seems to be too slow to them. So how do we get them out of that into the connection?
And then we'll jump into the rest of it.
So I don't know if we can actually get them out of it. And I don't know that we need to get them out of that space because digitalization, AI is not going anywhere. And so we have to learn how to embrace it and maybe shift a little bit. I have a 17-year-old that he can be on his phone. He can have one earbud with one piece of noise or information going on, something else in the other ear, and still talk to you. It's just this incredible way that his mind works. Well, I wasn't raised that way, and I was not born into technology like he was. And so I think it's having to get creative and finding ways that students can connect. You've got gamers and they're connecting online. You have people that have, communities on Facebook and they're connecting there or on LinkedIn or, independent communities or like your community. Those are ways that people are connecting when they find something that is a commonality. And just because people don't connect in the way that we feel is appropriate doesn't mean that they're not connecting and making those bonds.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, I love that. So we're talking about this transition, this movement, this journey from kindergarten through 12th grade and then into college. And one of the things that parents often misunderstand is what their role is as we go through that. So help us understand some of the things that you've seen making that bigger move, especially in the upper grades, that parents kind of miss, or maybe they overstep. Sometimes we call them those helicopter parents, right?
Bulldozer parents, yes. So, and some of this comes from my perspective as being an administrator at both levels. So I have seen the transitions. I taught 7 through 12 in high school, and then I've taught and I've been an administrator at both levels and at the college and university levels. So whenever you have parents, a lot of times parents think that they are there to be the solvers. They are there to be kind of the overarching, I know best as you go through is what I've seen with a lot of parents. But as you transition, it's really important that you start to provide some opportunities for independence for your kids. Whether it is, and I started this with my kids a long time ago, if we were at the grocery store and we couldn't find something, they go, well, why don't you go ask somebody, Mom? I said, no, why don't you? Go find somebody in the store and why don't you ask them the question? Start those verbal communication skills, start to figure out how to ask questions. And so as we are going from, being dependent to independence, it doesn't happen overnight. And it's developed through opportunities to make those decisions and experience the consequences, but then also reflect on it. So I think that's part of the thing is we're trying to keep our kids safe and in this bubble because we know the answers and we want to help them along the way. But as you transition into college, you need to realize that your role doesn't become smaller. You're not losing them. It simply changes and you're helping to guide them.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when we talk about the lower levels, right, we think move from that baby who needed absolutely everything to that toddler who is more independent. And sometimes the parents forget to grow and change with those different stages.
We don't want to. We don't want our kids to grow up.
We don't, but they need to.
We
and
don't.
We need to.
Well, and so instead of having a statement like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll handle it for you, instead say, how can I support you as you handle this?
Yeah. We've had a previous conversation and those two terms that you like to use, and I love them. So the bulldozer and the helicopter. Tell us a little bit more about those, and maybe we'll see if any of our audience kind of sees themselves in this.
So this is a term that is many times used in the college setting. So whenever we have a registration or an event, a lot of times we'll have parents attend, and I'm attending all the events with my son as well. However, when you arrive on a college campus, that experience is for the student. That is the main purpose, is that's going to be the location for the student. So when the student and the parent come in and the student doesn't say a word and the parent is asking all the questions, they're making all the decisions, That is really what we call a bulldozer parent. So they are telling them what major to have, what classes they're going to be in, what times they're going to do. I mean, all of those things. So the parent is making all the decisions. And what happens is that that student is completely disconnected from this experience. And so when they come to campus, they are not vested in it. They are not interested in getting involved. They are not interested in attending their classes because it wasn't their idea. When you have a helicopter parent, some of those same things are similar, but I would get phone calls and say, I want to know how Susie is doing in her class. Well, if your child is now 18 and at the college level, I'm not allowed to tell you anything about Susie unless they sign off on an agreement that I have permission to talk to you. And it doesn't matter if you pay for their tuition. It doesn't matter if you're a tax-paying citizen. I am not allowed to tell you any information unless that student has signed off on it. So the helicopter parents are always the one that want to know what's going on, and they're hovering in the background. So the best thing that I can encourage you to do is if you want to be there, fantastic. And that shows that you are interested in the education of your child. But before you come, I encourage you to have that conversation. Talk about the questions that you want answered between you and your student. What are questions that they have? What are questions that you have? And how can that be navigated once you get to the college campus? Now, if there's a question that the student doesn't know how to ask, let's work through that together. But as an administrator, I would always make a point to speak to the student. I would look the student in the eye. I would ask them the questions. And a lot of times they'd look at their mom or dad and go, okay, what do you want me to say? I'm like, no, no, no. I'm asking you, what is your interest? And so it takes both sides of the equation to really navigate that process.
It really, really does. Yeah.
So well, I've heard about it. Second, well, one person away, it's like their parent came into their job to talk to their boss because their child couldn't. It's like that is a solver parent. That's someone who never gave their children any responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
How do we start to give that to, because they're 18 and now they're just learning, and this is something that they should have been learning a lot earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is kind of a reason that colleges are highly recruiting from homeschoolers now, because
Mm-hmm.
that is less likely to happen. So how does that child be, how do we start helping that child become successful without and take that leadership of their own life? Because as a college administrator, that's probably got to be one of the highest priorities.
It is, your goal as a college administrator is to create successful students so that they can be a positively contributing member of society. I mean, that is really your whole goal, whether it is to continue on to higher education, at the university for their junior, senior year, or to get out of the workforce or career and technical, that is the main space. So what tends to happen and what I love is that if a student has the opportunity to live on campus, if they have an opportunity to move away and start to experience some things where they get to experience I don't want to say repercussions because it's not always negative, of their own decisions. They get to the consequences of their own decisions, positive and negative. That helps them begin to navigate. Oh, well, that was a positive. And like we said, it's never a failure. I think Joanne was the one that said that. It's never a failure. It just gives you feedback. So, oh, that was an unpleasant experience. Maybe I won't do that anymore. Or this is a great experience. Maybe I will do that. And in those experiences, you are learning what you like and what you don't like. And that also helps improve your own voice. So when it comes to the next meeting or the next interaction or the next activity where the parent might be involved, I have seen shifts in students from being very introspective and very quiet to being very confident in what they liked, what they didn't like, and what their next decision would be. But it's having that space. Did that answer your question?
I think it did.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And actually, there is a question down in the chat that goes right along this. I don't know if you read it or not, Stanley. It's like,
I was gonna read it, but our screen just blacked out around the edges, so we've lost our chat, so I can't see it.
Well, I will read it for you. How's that?
Okay.
He said, I think for many parents, this tendency is because of feeling alone, confused, or abandoned when they were in that space. What advice do you have for parents who are doing helicopter or bulldozer? Because when they were in the life space, personally going to college, they ended up with regrets about what they missed out on. So I think this is a very, very valid point. Depending on where the parents are in their educational cycle, you might have a student, this is their first time attending college, and you just want to know what it's all about. Or you may have had a negative experience, as Stanley mentioned, they may have felt abandoned or lost, and they want more information. Colleges and universities, one thing that they have done, especially since COVID, is they have done a really good job about providing resources and experiences for parents so that they can understand the process as the student experiences the process. So there are some things, and again, we welcome individuals to the registration or recruiting events. We welcome those parents. Just realizing that when you're in that space, I encourage you listen a little bit more than you speak. Encourage your student to speak a little bit more than you do, and you will get a lot of the same information. My son is going to a university that's in Mississippi, and they actually have orientation, but they say parents need to come and students need to come, and they have two separate programs so that there is experience for the parents and what you will see, what resources you have, how you can access information. Then they also have the student experience because they're the ones that are going to be there. And so with technology, that has really allowed, and as we mentioned before, a way to connect if you understand how and if you're willing to embrace it. So, yeah.
And I totally get Stanley's question because, for example, I was the first one to go to college in my
Mm,
family. So my parents had no clue and they were totally
right.
freaked out. And they at first said, there is no way you're moving away to college. You're picking a college close to home so you can live at home and then go to school. They were still
Mm-hmm.
very much in that controlling.
I'm really
And
glad
Mm-hmm.
that didn't happen.
and luckily, the college counselor, when we met with them, they said, because you live so close, yes, we can waive the freshman live on campus requirement. And would you please consider that? Because your daughter needs to have that space to learn and grow, etc.
And find her husband.
And
Yeah.
eventually find my
Yay.
husband, right? But I can understand completely what Stanley's talking about, maybe bad experiences from their own first bits at college, et cetera. And then my experience being the first one to go to college. So yeah, that's great.
Biggest things about that though is that college is a whole different set of terminology.
Yeah.
It's a whole different language. And so if you don't understand it, my son, poor thing, he has two college administrators as parents. So he can't avoid it and there's nothing escaping it. But for those that don't, it is a whole new world and it can be very scary. But it's being receptive and open and just asking questions in the appropriate manners that's going to get you the longest way.
And I know this isn't exactly along your talk line, but it's very dear to my heart. And we kind of talked about it before, is that I have a son who needs extra help. He's on the autism spectrum. He could not have navigated, even with some of the pre-talk and stuff like you've suggested, which is super, super important. He couldn't have navigated that without me in some spaces. And I really try to push
Yes.
him. But that same situation happened. We went to community college and the person wouldn't talk to me at all
Mm-hmm.
because of what you were saying. He's 18, he has to
Mm-hmm.
do his own thing, right? And until I really kind of poked him and said, you need to tell them that they can talk to me because otherwise I can't help you in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give maybe a little bit more guidance around that? Because we have parents who are in this space where, their
Yes.
child does need a little bit of extra. And I know you guys are stuck with certain rules, but
Yeah.
there's got to be a balance in here somewhere.
No, absolutely, there is. And so, just to kind of put on the level playing field, students who need extra help in the K 12 setting through testing and other pieces of diagnostics in K 12, you are identified usually by the school district or by a physician a condition or situation in which you need extra assistance, which is guided through an individual education plan, an IEP. So they are really seeking how can they help you with whatever resources they have. Once you transition to college, you have to self identify. So you will have to find the accessibility office. You will have to self identify. And at the time that you register, and parents, this is something that if you're not familiar with this term, FERPA, which is, the federal regulation about education and communicating with parents and students and educational information. There needs to be a form that is signed, so then it has to be a physical signature so that the college can, or the university can speak to you about that student. And so once you self identify, come in with the accommodations that you're seeking. It has to go through a committee, it has to be approved, it has to be sent out to the instructors. And so if you come the first day with this, they might not get their accommodations until the 6th week. So I encourage you, whenever you register, I hope that it's several weeks before the start of the semester so that that information can get taken care of, go in front of that committee, and be provided to the instructors as soon as the add drop period is over.
Perfect. Thank you. That just
You're
really
welcome.
alleviates me. And I just know there's a lot of, especially like homeschool parents and stuff who are moving into this college world that might be a little bit different because they didn't have that identification in the school system. So they have to
Yep.
know how to make it happen there.
One other thing that I will just mention is for the students that are going to college that might have a challenge with a professor or instructor meeting their needs and following those accommodations, instead of assuming they don't care, they don't know what's going on, a lot of the professors are college educated, meaning they have to have a master's or greater in order to teach. They don't have the formal educational background.
Yeah.
So they are not always aware of what accommodation means, and they might not know how to adjust their teachings in order to meet your needs. So, as a student, and if your parent is on that signature agreement, please go to the professor directly and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure that my students' accommodations were being met. And they might go, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, you can walk through some things at that point, but understand that some of those professors and instructors might not have any idea of how to do things if it's one of their first times or if they didn't come from an educational background.
That's great to know. Yeah.
So most bulldozers and helicopter parents, if they are able to recognize it, don't necessarily think it's a problem or have a desire to change. So can how do you get them to communicate with their children to start taking that independence? If they're still in high school, it's like, where is the intervention for the parents to say, hey, you need to,
I love it. A parent
because it's like the parents who are here, it's like there's difference between involved parents and involved parents. Oh, did we just shut
Yeah.
Yeah,
down?
we're fine.
Yeah. No, you're still there. I still see you.
Oh, our we're kind of glitching on our side, and it's like, oh, so
We're good.
she's
Just go.
so
Yeah.
okay, I kind of lost track. Was that enough of a question?
Yes, that was plenty. That was plenty. So, yes, so a few simple communication shifts that parents can have in order to go from where they are in high school to where they need to be in college, correct? Perfect. So it's really shifting from, telling your students and your children what they need to do to listening to what their child thinks they need to do. And so you can start asking more reflective questions. And I would even start this at your junior year in high school if you can. If you're already past that, then, let's just start asking questions. But in the junior year in high school, when they're starting to think about what are their next steps? What do you think your next step should be? Make it an open-ended question. What have you already tried? Or what support do you need? Or if they have a college that they're interested in, have them reach out to the recruiter and create that email. Don't send the email from the parent, although we get a whole bunch of those. Encourage the student to send that out. And so, whenever you do those things, some of the students are like, well, what if I don't say the right thing? What if it sounds stupid? What if that's okay? Again, it's not failure, it's feedback. It's giving you information on, all right, no, that might not have been the appropriate way, but next time I'll do it better. And so one word to the wise, please don't use all caps, especially in educational setting. Online, that means that you're yelling at somebody. And I know texting, there's a whole bunch of other things. So I encourage you, even if you need something like Chat GPT to help formulate a message, that is great. The more that you use full sentences rather than statements and emojis, the better that you can get your question through. Now, a lot of schools do use texting as a way to communicate once you're in the system, but it's getting in the system that is the challenge. So I would just encourage, start asking questions. For my son, I say, okay, well, where do you want to go? Where do you want to visit? What do you think your major should be? Why do you like that one? Why do you not like that one? What are your interests? And so they're going to go, Mom, really? You're going to ask all these questions? But yes. And so now encouraging them to do things. Well, my advisor emailed me. What should I say? Well, what do you think you should say?
There you go.
Well, I don't know. Well, maybe I need to make an appointment. I said, great. When do you plan to make the appointment? So
Exactly. Put
it's
it back on
it's a
them
lot
with
of,
the little
that's
guidance.
right.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yay.
So one of
And
my favorite
there
acronyms
we go.
for fail is further attempts in learning. So you didn't
Yes.
fail, you learned something. Further attempts in learning is what fail.
Well, and the other piece is that a lot of individuals will say that they are scared or they have fear. And fear really is something that we put on ourselves because you are creating this emotion about something that hasn't even happened yet. And so whenever you think about fear, just pause, realize what's the worst that could happen, what's the best that could happen, and anywhere in between, we can navigate this and take that step, get out of that comfort zone because that's where you're going to grow. If you can't get out of that comfort zone, then you're not going to be challenged. You're not going to have any place where you have to make a decision, or you're not going to be, I guess, challenged is the best word that I can think of in order to take that step forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Stephanie, for all of this awesome, awesome information. Could you please share your free gift and your VIP before we have to go?
Absolutely. So, my free gift is a resource that is 5 communication shifts every parent needs before their child goes to college. And so, it is going to talk about practical guide to help you navigate the transition from K-12 to higher ed with more clarity and confidence. Talks about intentional shifts, some communication support that you can take without overstepping. And then the VIP guide is leading your child through college transition with clarity and confidence. So it's a little bit deeper into that space. And so it helps you navigate that with greater ease and intention. It provides simple communication tools, real life conversation examples, and clear guidance to support your child.
That is awesome. And in the chat right now, we actually have a parent who said, wow, this was a timely conversation. So hopefully that parent's able to grab these links and use them right away. Thank you, Dr. Stephanie, for being here today, being on the panel. So appreciate it. We're going to take our quick break and come back with our next speaker in just a couple minutes.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.